This episode of the Party Loaded podcast is proudly sponsored by Audible.com. Check out their awesome catalogue of audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from. And be sure to grab a free audiobook on us and support the show by visiting audibletrial.com/endgame.
Let's party.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Party Loaded. It is Tuesday evening, the 18th of June. We're recording a little earlier this week after the flurry of activity that we had for E3 last week. But despite all that activity being over, we are still going to be bringing you everything great in the world of video games, because there's still stuff going on. There's still there's still a trickle here and there, not the overflow of stuff in previous weeks, but we got the full crew back tonight. We're all here to chat everything. So my name's Luke Retallick. We've got Adrian Chia joining us again. We've got Matt, the Game Dad Diet, and returning after his month overseas, doing all sorts of fun shit, which we're going to grill him on in just a moment. We have the return of Christian Paulson Brown. Welcome back.
Yay, it's me.
Welcome
I'm
back.
Yay. We're all
Good to be
on board.
back.
That's it. And you are a officially spoken for man now, which is fantastic. Well done. Well done.
That's right.
Yeah.
I am indeed engaged now.
Absolutely.
Hooray!
Yeah. Are you comfortable sharing the story, or do you want to keep that one to yourself? Is that something?
I mean, it was a pretty nothing, no fireworks or anything like that. It was just at
None of these
Windsor
fucking
Castle
Disneyland weddings or anything.
in the UK. It was at a real castle.
Nice.
But the proposal itself was just popping, down on one knee, asking somebody to take a picture of us, and then surprising. So yeah.
And then
it was
pushing her over the balcony.
They're pushing over the balcony.
Wow.
No.
Then the Queen came out and congratulated me, and we wrote it.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
Awesome.
You got that even without being 100 years old. That's impressive. I thought that was the rule. No, it's
cool.
good. So yeah, I mean, did you get to see anything that absolutely blew your mind in terms of landmarks and highlights and that kind of stuff? Like, what was the best thing you got to do? The most fun thing you got to do?
The best thing I got to do. What was the best thing I got to do? I don't know.
Apart from getting engaged.
Apart from getting engaged, we went to, I think, 26 museums in total.
Holy shit!
Or galleries. So we went to a lot of stuff. But probably my favorite was in Stockholm in Sweden. There's a museum that's entirely dedicated to this one thing, and it's called the Vasa. And it's a 17th century ship, like this massive ornate galleon that was constructed like by this royal family. And then the first time it went out into the water, it sunk just 50 meters from shore because it was built wrong.
Oh.
And it was this sort of style over substance story where they made it super lavish but hadn't actually balanced it properly. But then the ground that it sank in was preserved it really well. So it's like this immaculately preserved 17th century galleon, and it's just when they raised it up in the 1950s, it's like pretty much like it was just built. Like it's mind blowing to see. It's like time traveling going to see it because it's so immaculately preserved. So
Wow.
that's my favorite thing.
Like
Awesome.
Titanic sans iceberg sort of thing.
It's like Titanic if you could just walk around the Titanic. Basically, it's super well preserved because of the conditions of the water there. So it's amazing.
Nice. Well, speaking of well preserved, I believe that you have some opinions and thoughts on the E3 goodness that you didn't get to chat to us about last week.
That's
that may
right.
be well preserved.
I had an amazing time overseas, but I didn't have anybody to talk video games with, sadly. So I've got a bit of pent up thoughts and feelings on E3. I'll just quickly blast through.
I like to call this stuff tantric hype, just for the record.
That's tantric hype. So I'm just going to hit a couple of things in each conference just really quickly. So with Microsoft, I thought Microsoft was a pretty decent conference. They didn't waste a lot of time with people standing around on stage too much or talking heads. It was a lot of trailers. I thought Jedi Fallen Order looks kind of average. It looks visually nice, but it doesn't look very fun to me yet. I'm waiting to see the fun in that game. The force powers look kind of bland. Cyberpunk 2077 remains super awesome and one of my most hyped and anticipated games over the last 10 years. So and not just from the stage conference, but from everything I've heard of the hands-on and the backstage and everything, like people actually playing the game, sounds amazing.
Just on that, have you done the math on what the release schedule is looking like for the early next year at the moment? Especially given one of the news items we're going to talk about a little later.
Yeah, it's like March is insane, isn't it?
Fucking hell. Like from February through to April, I think is just going to be an absolute like death pit of awesomeness. So yeah.
But Cyberpunk will most likely be my main focus at that point in time. Keanu Reeves is cool. He like, I get some people are kind of hesitant to like hype it up too much because he's not a video game. He's just an actor. But he is a cool guy, and I thought it was a fun little thing.
Interesting thing that came up this week, which we didn't get to mention last week about him, is that apparently he has actually got the second largest amount of voice lines in that game. So,
yeah. Like he's not just tacked on. He's a huge. From what I understand, he's basically like your Cortana, like your person who's always with you. He's like a ghost in your head kind of thing.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was supposed to have a part in the game where he sings, but they wouldn't allow Keanu to sing. They've actually got somebody else that does the singing. He's really sad about it.
Oh, boo.
I like that it's clear that he did not expect for it to be as big a deal as it is. Like when he like the reaction to him on stage kind of took him aback. Like you can tell, and like he was briefed beforehand going like, this isn't just another corporate gig. Like this is going to be bigger than you think. And it did like blow him away. I thought that was kind of cute. Battletoads looks awful. I'm sorry. I love Battletoads for the NES, and I got super excited when I heard that pause music kicking in. But the actual game, I think, looks ugly, and I hate that it's screen based. So Battletoads was always a scroller, but this is like you get locked into a screen. You beat the bad guys in the screen, move to the next screen.
Preach.
I don't like that. I've heard from people playing hands-on that it's not very fun either because when enemies get knocked down, you can't hit them on the ground, which you could in Battletoads, and you have to kind of just wait for them to stand up, and it's annoying. Elden Ring, I am super excited for. It's just a CG trailer, but really cool. I obviously love FromSoft. They're probably in my top 3 developers at the moment, so I'm super excited about Elden Ring and the prospect of a more open world Souls-like game with the GRRM influence in it.
And the prospect of another game that you can complete 6 times in the course of 2 months. So.
Yeah, I'm sure that sounds like it'll take a lot longer to do. If they can, it's going to be almost the opposite end of the spectrum to Sekiro by the sounds of it. So much more customization, so much like very RPG heavy, whereas Sekiro is just so focused on one character just doing exactly what he does instead of like flexibility.
True. Yeah.
Xbox Game Pass for PC, I do like, because as somebody who doesn't actually own an Xbox conferences for me have always just been what third-party games are going to be revealed on the stage. I've never really been into Xbox exclusives very much, but having the pass for PC is something that speaks to me. I have got the beta, but unless they add more games soon, I wouldn't probably pay the full price for it yet. Project Scarlett, I mean, like I've never owned an Xbox, and the fact that they're bringing all their games to Windows now anyway, I'm already predisposed to not really be interested in Project Scarlett. But I felt that even still, if all they had to say about it was that it's really powerful, I think that probably didn't deserve to be on an E3 stage. Like I like what Sony did, where that was just like a Forbes article, I think, where they talked about that sort of thing. Like what they said about it was fine, and it's interesting to know. But I think for an E3 stage, they needed to go, and the fact that Sony wasn't there, they needed to like go further than Sony did to make an impact on me. The fact that they kind of just matched what Sony did, but on a bigger stage, I didn't like that very much.
The rumor that I'd heard going around that never actually panned out was that they were going to be playing Halo Infinite live on stage. That didn't happen, because that would have been impressive, right? Like, here's Halo Infinite on Project Scarlett.
And you actually showing gameplay, that would have been big. And instead we kind of got a pre-rendered trailer again. And it just, I totally agree that the Project Scarlett announcement kind of fell flat, even though that was pretty much what I was expecting, like just a teaser. So
I was expecting a teaser, but maybe at least like a proper name reveal and something a little more concrete. But I mean, like, I'm probably not gonna get a Scarlett or whatever it's gonna be called, no matter what, because I'll just play everything on PC. So.
Isn't it a shame that a lot of these Xbox consoles don't actually keep the code name as the actual product name? They sound so much better.
Well, I've actually heard that this one, the code name is Anaconda for this one. Not even like it's Project Scarlett, but then code name Anaconda apparently.
Yeah,
which I think is weird. Yeah,
we'll see.
Anyway, moving on because I'll just do this quickly. Bethesda, their actual stage conference I thought was awful. I had to switch it off. But games-wise, Ghostwire Tokyo, it was just a CG trailer, but it really intrigues me with the setting, and Akumi Nakamura was awesome on stage. Commander Keen made me want to vomit. Deathloop is, again, just a CG trailer, but interesting concept and a kind of funky trailer. Doom Eternal looks awesome, and that's a game that I'm, of course, already sold on. So I didn't really need to. I don't need to see much more Doom. Like, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm going to play it day one anyway. So it had a good showing, but I was already sold on it, so it doesn't mean too much to me that it was there.
Doom Eternal for me is like Avengers Endgame. I didn't need to see shit. Like, I already know.
Yeah,
yeah.
The battle mode thing's interesting though. But yeah, so Bethesda I thought was pretty weak because they didn't really show many. They didn't show any unannounced games, like gameplay wise.
What did you think about their response to the Fallout 76 position?
I thought it was super predictable and super corporate, like very, very. Thank you to our community who've stuck it out. We know that we can do better, and we promise that we've got these big plans. We're going to add NPCs. It's basically the typical games as a service thing we're seeing, which is 1 year on, the game will be how it should have been at launch, and I don't find that acceptable. I think that's crappy and scummy. So I wasn't a big fan of it. But I mean, the game is going to get better, but it doesn't give them a pass for me. So
yeah, they've got a long way to go before they get their No Man's Sky-esque comeback.
Definitely.
Yeah. And that's a whole other thing. No Man's Sky being such a small studio and everything too.
Yeah, exactly.
Ubisoft, Watch Dogs Legion looks interesting, but I don't know if it's for me. But I'm intrigued by the whole like no single protagonist concept. I find that interesting. But not really anything else in Ubisoft. Gods and Monsters, just another CG trailer, interesting idea. But yeah, nothing else in Ubisoft. Square Enix, FF7 remake looks awesome. Outriders, just a CG trailer, but looks interesting. Marvel Avengers, I thought was pretty
bland,
disappointing. Yeah, like I mean, I'm an MCU fan. I've never actually been a comics fan, so I'm not that interested in it. Like there were those kind of snippets of gameplay you could see mixed in between the CG trailer, but it didn't sell me on the game. I thought it looked bland visually, and it didn't explain to me why the game's going to be fun. And then the fact that they were saying things like there's going to be no loot boxes, I'm like, hang on, like what do you mean there's going to be new? Like, what kind of game is this? And then I just assumed that it was going to be like a third person action game, but it sounds like it's going to be like some sort of games as a service model, which puts me off entirely. Like they were saying no loot boxes as if that's a good thing, where I didn't even think for a second this was going to be the kind of game that could potentially even have loot boxes in it. So yeah. And Nintendo, the Dragon Quest Hero and Banjo-Kazooie, both really cool. I mean, Dragon Quest has never been a huge thing in the West and never been a big thing for me. But from everything I've read, like that's pretty much the biggest announcement ever for Japanese players. Like Dragon Quest means so much to people in Japan that we can't even like the reaction that Banjo-Kazooie had in the West. You multiply that several times, and that's how much Japan loves Dragon Quest Hero. So good for them.
Yeah. I think it's a situation like Yakuza, where they have had it over there for so long and not here, that when it eventually starts to come over here, people catch on, and it takes a while for them to warm up to the series. So
and even like, because I think people are warming up to Dragon Quest really since 9. I think 9 and now 11. But even then, there's not that nostalgia. Like Dragon Quest, people in Japan grew up with it from like the NES, and like they can point to like moments in their life where they played every single Dragon Quest game, like we can Mario games, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And
so even if the West catches up to Dragon Quest, it won't have that lineage that it has in people's hearts. Fire Emblem looks fine. It's interesting that it seems to time skip and the characters get older, because people were worried it was going to be like a high school thing. Astral Chain, I'm super excited for. Demon X Machina put on a good show, but they still haven't fixed the frame rate. Sword and Shield looks good. The that wild area thing was in the direct beforehand, so that's doesn't even count. But Breath of the Wild sequel, obviously super exciting, even though there's not too much information on it, and that game's probably 3 years out, something like that.
Yeah.
2, 3 at least. So yeah, overall, I thought E3 was actually super average. Potentially even I'd call it a bad E3. It feels super like an E3 before console announcements where people are just kind of treading water. There's a lot of CG trailers because some of these games are probably going to be next-gen games, or they're like just too early on in development because they will be for next-gen. I think that if I had to call a winner, I'd say Nintendo, because they showed the most real gameplay trailers with release dates of good-looking games, whereas a lot of the other companies, so many CG trailers this year, that it kind of got a bit annoying. But so I'd say Nintendo did the best with actually showing me good games. So.
Yeah. Well, without having actually listened to our discussion last week, I think we're all pretty much in accord. Just good.
You basically echoed a lot of what I was saying as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good stuff. All right. Well, enough of that E3 shit.
Yes.
Let's talk about some games. So, Christian, I was going to give you a break from talking, but you've been playing some stuff while you've been away, no doubt. So what little have you had time to squeeze in before we give you a break?
I hardly played anything. So I brought my Switch with me, and I did have a number of flights. So I managed to complete Castlevania 1.
Oh, yes, you were going to do that. I remember. Yeah.
Because Castlevania was my franchise blind spot we talked about in a previous episode, where I'd never really played any Castlevania games. So I got the anniversary collection before I left, and then I finished Castlevania 1. Castlevania 2 was super because it's really non-linear.
2 is Simon's Quest, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's actually really hard to figure out what you're supposed to do. Like, I feel like I needed the game manual or like a wiki or something to actually play it properly. So I kind of gave up playing that because I got confused. Because you're not in a castle, you're actually in like a open world. Like, it's hard to explain, but it's too confusing. And then Castlevania 3, I got most of the way through. That has branching paths, but they actually all kind of lead in one direction, and it adds switchable characters, which is cool. And then the other game I played was Stardew Valley. So I'd had it for ages, and the first time I tried to play Stardew Valley, I literally walked out of my house, went into the town, and then saw how big the town was and went, I can't be fucked talking to everybody in this town, and never played it again. But this time I actually talked to everybody in the town, and I played several weeks into it, and it was fun. It was a fun way to kill time on the plane, growing my crops and doing lots of fishing and that sort of stuff. But not exactly my kind of game, but it was fun just to pass the time. But that's really all I managed to play. So
nice. All right. Well, Adrian, the moment has come to talk about something super fun. So I did not get a chance to play this just yet because I actually had my son had his birthday today, and this was meant to be a present for him. But you are ahead of the game and have. So why don't you chat to us about Cadence of Hyrule? What's going on with that?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Crypt and Necrodancer. I seem to remember telling Christian that I was back when Christian and I lived together. I remember saying to him, "I've been playing Crypt and Necrodancer." And Christian was like, "Yeah, I know. I could hear you banging on the keyboard."
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
I know whenever you're playing it because I could hear you like bat, 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 bat on the keyboard. So I know you've been playing it.
That's right.
So I'm pretty sure I 100% in Crypt and Necrodancer, or at least squeezed the most out of it that I could. So
did you play the expansion with the extra character when that came out?
A little bit, but not a great deal. It sort of came out after my hype sort of started to peter off with it. So it's a little bit like more Super Nintendo cuter than the original Crypt and Necrodancer, which is a bit more kind of basic. So the art style really appealed. And then, although I'm not a big Zelda fan, I really liked the idea of taking that mechanic and turning it into a full-fledged game, which for the most part it is. I'll try to avoid spoilers for people who haven't finished it and haven't played all the way through. Although in saying that, there's not a lot to spoil, I think. The game is rather short, like way shorter than I thought it was going to be. I only managed to get about 4 or 5 hours out of it and pretty much completed the whole game and almost got everything, including like heart containers and extra items and stuff like that. So there's not enough, I think, on that front. But aside from that, I think it's a lot of fun. It's very hard initially, and then the game kind of breaks after you like get some good weapons. And unlike Crypt of the Necrodancer, which is far more roguelite in the way that you lose every item that you obtain on a run. In Cadence of Hyrule, there are some permanent items that you don't lose, mainly the weapons that you pick up. So you can pick up like variations. You can pick up what's called glass versions of your weapons, which are like really powerful but break as soon as you take damage. But any other weapon that you pick up is permanently added to your character, and you can select it whenever you want. And once you get the spear, once I got the spear, I didn't die ever again. Like, that's kind of how the game went for me. So I found it kind of changed the gameplay in that a lot of the way you play Cadence of Hyrule and Crypt of the Necrodancer is by kind of sussing out an enemy's movement pattern and then working out when you need to jump in and attack them and then jump back to move out of harm's way. But the spear kind of breaks the game in the way that you can attack an enemy from 2 squares away. So what it means is that you don't ever need to put yourself in harm's way when you're facing an enemy. You can attack them from a distance and never have to like enter their area of attack. So like I say, once I got the spear, the game just kind of flatlined and wasn't difficult at all anymore for me. But the first couple of, maybe the first 20 minutes of the game were, like, I died more in the first 20 minutes than I did in the entirety of the rest of the playthrough. So that is maybe a bit of a criticism. Aside from that, I think there's a lot to like. There's, really creative bosses and some really fun enemies, and there's a lot to explore and that kind of thing. It's not as puzzle polished as a Zelda game, I would say. So anyone going into it expecting it to sort of satisfy you in the same way that dungeons do in a mainline Zelda game, I would say be prepared for it to be far more of a rhythm game than that. There are dungeons and there are puzzles, but they're pretty simple and pretty easy to work out. There's not a lot of like creative dungeon planning. It's mostly just you go into the dungeon and you unlock a couple of doors and that's kind of it. You don't need to, flip too many switches and do too much, problem solving in that regard.
It's not like puzzle shrines or anything like that.
No, not really. I wouldn't think so. And again, I did play it very quickly, so I'm probably not giving it the justice it deserves just in this quick, spiel. But the other thing I have an issue with is the price of the game. So I think it's $37 or $38 on the Nintendo shop.
In Australia, I think it is around the 30-something. Yeah.
Yeah, which is way too much. I think that's way too much. Especially, like, I remember convincing my wife to let me buy it on Saturday, and then Sunday night she watched me finish it, and she said to me, "Is that it? Is that the whole game?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think it is." And she was like, she pretty much was upset that I had wasted. I mean, I couldn't have known, but I certainly didn't feel like I got enough out of it to be worth that price tag. Anyone thinking of buying it, my advice is wait for it to drop in price if it does, or wait for it to be on sale.
Any replay value, do you think, or?
I don't think there's enough replay value. I think like the replay value they try to sell you on is like you can play it again, but try to beat the game with taking the least amount of steps, or try to beat the game, with like tougher enemies or something like that. Like I don't think there's much replay value in it immediately. I don't want to replay it straight away, but it might be fun to kind of dust it off, in a couple of months' time and play through it again because it is so short. It's a shame, Christian, that it wasn't out for you, Christian, before you left on your trip. Yeah, that's about it for Cadence of Hyrule. I think it's fun.
I did pick it up as well.
Yeah.
And like one thing that I noticed is that there's not as much variety in the music as I was hoping. The overworld, from what I've seen so far, has like I've seen maybe 3 or 4 different songs on the overworld, and some of them I like aren't very memorable. They're not very Zelda-like. Yeah.
It would have been a really great opportunity, I think, which is what you're hinting at, to make it a bit of like a Zelda, like what's the right word, like a best of soundtrack.
That's what I was hoping for. And then like right on the title screen, it has like a really charming remix of like the main like Zelda title music, and that was like that got me super excited to like hear all these remixes of the Zelda songs. And there's like a couple in there that I've heard, but I was really expecting it to be like an album's worth of really cool like chip tune Zelda remixes, and it's not
like the sort of stuff you get in Smash, for instance.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just not that's the thing I was looking forward to most.
Yeah.
It is super charming, and like I think I'm about halfway through the game. By what the game tells you to do, I'm halfway through the game, and I've played it for a couple of hours, and I don't regret my purchase because I would have wanted to satisfy my curiosity anyway. And it is fun and it is super charming. But I definitely can already see what you're saying, Adrian, about it being a little too thin.
Yeah.
And yeah.
There's hints of some like cool stuff. Like there's a couple of music puzzles where like you have to, there's memory, like Simon Says puzzles where you have to hear a tune, memorize it, and then play it. And those kind of hint at like a larger kind of puzzle solving element, but they're really shallow and over very quickly. And the kind of stuff Zelda's famous for, collecting bugs or solving, seeing an area that you can't access and then going and finding that there's a vendor there that you need to do a puzzle for, and he'll reward you with something. It doesn't really have a lot of that. And the other thing that's unfortunate about the game is that there's a lot of items like in Zelda where you get like a hook shot or a boomerang, or you pick up these different items. But when it comes down, it's hard because when it comes down to the core gameplay, you never use them because like a lot of like video games where you get too many items, nothing is as good as just smashing the enemy in the face. So there's like hardly ever any reason to use those items. Like
I've noticed that. But like with the scrolls in particular.
I never use the scroll.
I never use the scrolls because I just never remember to or never need to. Like,
and it's annoying where like you have an inventory of, let's say, 30 items, and you can map any 4 of them at any given time to one of the X, Y, A, B buttons. But like Christian was just saying, there's an expendable item. There's about 5 different types of scrolls which you can pick up and use. But in order to use them, you have to open the menu, map it to the button, go back out into the game, use it, and then it's gone. And you have to remap that button to something else. Yeah. So it's just it's not worth the time and effort to even use it. So yeah, overall, it's fun, it's charming. I recommend checking it out, but maybe wait for the price to come down. That's what I think. The other game, just very quickly, that I actually have played far more of, like a lot of, like I think 50 odd hours in the last week.
Oh, geez.
Is Darkest Dungeon. I've been
again. You're back to the well again.
I am, but I've actually started playing all the DLC and the expansion that came out for it as well, and it's made me love the game even more. But it's very much like a masochistic, abusive relationship, which I think the game's famous for that. But there's the expansion for anyone who like is thinking of playing the game and anyone thinking about playing the expansion. I read a few reviews that said, like, don't do the expansion until you've beaten the main game. I would stick by that advice because all it does in true Darkest Dungeon style is add, like, extra layers of stress onto your gameplay with not a great deal of reward apart from, like, just dealing with the stress is meant to be its own reward, I think. So it's quite hard to manage, especially for me. I'm not very good at micromanagement, so it can be quite tricky. But I'm loving it again, and it even got me in the mood to look for some other like Lovecraftian, Eldritchy kind of games because I'm loving that kind of vibe that the game puts out. So
There's a big one of those coming out soon, I think, actually.
Yeah, right. Anyway, hitting Darkest Dungeon hard, but that's what's kept me busy in the last week. Yep.
All right, well, speaking of dark things and hitting them hard and good games, that's a perfect segue for Matt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had mentioned before that I had put time in with Doom and never actually finished playing it. And so I decided in the last couple of days that I was going to go back and I was going to revisit it and I was actually going to finish it. And I haven't finished it yet. I was at, I think about like 4 hours in when I had stopped playing before. I'm now sitting at around 8 or 9 hours in, and I thought that the last level I was in was actually the end of the game, but no, it seems like there's probably another level or 2, so I'm right at the tail end of the game at the moment. And yeah, so I'm going to make a statement that's going to upset Luke, and I love upsetting Luke.
Don't we all?
Yeah, so Doom 2016 is kind of overrated, or at least that is what I would have said if I only played like another hour without keeping on going. And what I've kind of taken away is that Doom 2016 is a game that becomes more fun the better at it you get. Like, you get out of it the stuff you put in. Like, the more you do well in that game, the more fun it is to play that game. The sort of
I would agree with
that flow. And part of the reason why I feel like I started getting more out of the game was swapping away from mouse and keyboard and playing with the controller. Like, the moment I swapped over to playing that game with a controller, like, selecting weapons became so much easier. Like, and just, I wasn't having this weird downtime where I was making a lot of questions about, like, what I was supposed to be using and that sort of thing. But I think part of the reason, so I say that, you know, Doom 2016 is overrated. It's still an excellent game, right? Like, it is a freaking fantastic game. And if you want to talk about game flow and that whole feeling of being in the zone and having, you know, this flow moment in a video game, Doom 2016 nails that better than I think any other game currently on the market as far as big first-person shooters go. And I'm saying that as a massive fan of Destiny 2. Like, Destiny 2 doesn't get the flow down in the same way that Doom does when you're just kind of running through and rampaging demons. But yeah, like, I don't know, like, I'm not having quite as much fun with it as I was kind of hoping that I would have. And I think that really just comes down to
the hype.
Like, yeah, there's a lot of hype around it that I'm just not feeling.
I think, Luke will maybe have more to say, but I think part of it might also be that Doom has, like, a very particular appeal in its aesthetic, and it's like...
Yes.
Like, I'm quite similar to Luke, maybe not as in love with Doom as Luke is, because that's probably impossible for another human being. But, like, even me, like, there's parts in Doom where, like, the music kicks up and, like, just everything's going around, and, like, you get like chills, like, I get, like, the hair standing up on the back of my neck because I'm just, like, so into it and, like, just so ready to go. And, like, I just love the aesthetic of Doom and, like, the attitude of Doom so much that if that doesn't speak to you personally, that might be a part of it too.
Oh, no. I love those moments. Like, when the music kicks up and you're just running around killing demons and everything, it feels fucking great. Yeah. Like, that's when the game shines through.
The opening sequence and how it handles that, I think it's probably one of the best opening sequences in a game ever. Like, it's...
Well, I think part of the reason is that once you get past a certain point in Doom, there's not a whole lot of new stuff it does. And for me personally, I kind of find myself dropping off really quickly because the new stuff that the game is doing right now, like, I've been through 2 boss fights and both of them were fucking great. Like, they were awesome fun. I really enjoyed them. But I'm at a point right now where when I was last playing, like, it was getting super late and I'm like, I'll finish this level and I'll call it a night. And I was on this tram ride thing very briefly and I hopped off into this room with a mass of demons and, like, the fight went for like 20 minutes and then I died and I had to restart the entire thing all over again because it just kept throwing shit at me to the point that it actually became unfun. Like, there was never this point at which where it was like, okay, like, I can have a breather. Like, it was actually getting too tense. And rather than feeling like I could kind of flex my skill at the game, I found myself running and hiding, which is not what it feels like Doom is supposed to be. Like, everything up to that point was like, yeah, fuck them up. But at that point, it's like, okay, well, now I've got to completely rethink my strategy. And it turns out, like, I was reading a whole bunch of threads on Reddit, like, you know, is this like that other people have had an issue with? And the answer is yes. Like, other people have kind of run into that, and they're all having all these, you know, discussions about strategies for going into it. And, like, if you have this specific loadout, like, it's much easier fight. And yeah, I'm like, that's a little bit disappointing to me in a game that up to that point, I could just play the way I wanted to, but now I've hit this roadblock almost. But that's a small thing. Like, so I don't want to sound like the game's bad, because that's absolutely not the case. Like, I'm really, really enjoying it. It's just not clicking with me the way that it's hyped up to be. And I think that I'm disappointed because I'm not finding myself as hyped. But if it didn't have the hype around it, I probably wouldn't be as bothered as I am, honestly. Like, it's a weird kind of thing where, you know, everybody else that it's not just Luke. Like, I know other friends that are super excited about Doom. And mind you, like, Doom Eternal, actually, I'm really hyped for it because there's a lot more personality, I think, coming through in the character that I'm not seeing in Doom now.
What difficulty are you playing Doom on?
Oh, I'm playing it on the mid difficulty, like, not the highest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes too high from the average one, I think. Yeah. there's
Hurt Me Plenty, I think, is the...
Hurt Me Plenty is the top one. So
no. There's one above
Nightmare's
that.
the top one.
Yeah,
Nightmare's
the top
right.
one.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not even an option for me right now. So
I'm Too Young to Die, and
yeah,
can't remember what that one is, but
yeah. So I'm on the other one.
I can't claim to have ever had any difficulty with the gameplay itself. That's interesting to hear.
Oh, like as I say, like it's just this one moment. It's just this one moment. I have not struggled with anything in the game until this one tram room. And mind you, I only did it once and then, died after 20 minutes of fighting. And I just had to take a break because it was like 20 minutes of just continuous Doom fighting. And it was almost like, it's a whole thing of, too much of a good thing, right? But also it just kind of became frustrating over time because normally when you're playing Doom, it's like, okay, well, I can kill things, get health back, and keep fighting. Whereas I was struggling to do that. I just wasn't getting enough health drops. I wasn't getting enough armor drops. The room was running out of resources for me to use against the demons. I could get ammo really easily, but I couldn't get health really easily anymore. And so I was just like, that room just became like a clusterfuck. And I'm sure if I go back and I know kind of what to expect, I won't have the same trouble now. But that would only be the second time I tried it. It's just a long fight that just, late at night, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to stop there for now. Again, that's a small thing. The rest of the game is fucking great. It's just, like I say, I think my problem that I'm having with it is that I can't be as excited because I was expecting more from it than what I've gotten because of how much everybody else hypes it up.
Yeah, fair enough. I think there's something to be said of like expectations when everyone loves something so much and then you watch it, you're like, oh well, your expectations are never going to match what the end result was.
I don't think anyone would argue that a lot of the stuff that is specific to Doom are very much things that you would associate with being things that I like as well. So it kind of makes sense that you would guess out of all four of us that I would be much more keen for that exact game than any of you based on those things alone.
There's so much about that game that I adore. Like the music is great, the combat is great, the game flow is great. The way they add personality to the Doom guy and the fact that it's all in the first person is so good. Yeah. Like, I love that shit.
Which they're changing and I don't like. They're doing third person cutscenes in Doom Eternal. And I don't like it.
I don't think there'll be many, but we'll see.
I'm a little bit disappointed about that, but at the same time, I'm more excited for Doom Eternal because there's a lot more of that personality shining through, I think. Yeah. But yeah, so that was Doom. But the other thing that I've been playing, and I know you've been playing as well, Luke, so we can kind of chat about this. I've been putting in a ton of time with Destiny's new season, so Season of Opulence. So I haven't engaged much with Callus as a character, so he's kind of the, not big bad, but he's basically the emperor of the Cabal, like this big race of like pig-like dudes. The
combat rhinos, power armored rhinos, basically.
Yeah, power armored rhinos. And he was like the boss of the first raid, or technically the boss. I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone, but he's back. Yeah.
He is one of the most interesting characters now in the game, I reckon. Fucking hell, I had no idea.
So his whole story is that like he was thrown out by the bad guy for Destiny 2 that was there. I forget his name. Gol. Yeah, thank you. So he was thrown out of leadership as emperor and basically put into exile and sent out. And so he basically was put on his gigantic Leviathan fish ship thing and found himself at the edge of the universe and where he saw the darkness. And he basically came back and went to the Earth, the Sol system, went to the Traveler, to basically see out the end of the world, basically. Like, he expects that everything's going to end, and he's not really prepping for it or anything like that. He's just getting a front seat to where the big fight's going to happen, is essentially how it's all panned out. And so he's a huge fanboy of the Guardians. And I have to mention, like, the lore in this season is so fucking good. Like, it is amazing. He is such a huge fan of the Guardian and the Guardians in general that he's had fan fiction written about your character and all the other Guardians, and it's so funny. Like, it is genuinely hilarious that his whole big ending is that you are going to crush your ghost at the very end of the universe, and he's going to be standing there with you to see the darkness flow through and destroy everything. Is basically like his fan fiction. But yeah, like he's super interesting character. The Season of Opulence, again, like Bungie's really flexing their narrative chops, and it gives me a lot of hope for where they're going to take story and everything, because it's becoming such a thing at the fore. But the big part of Season of Opulence that I wanted to chat about was the Menagerie, which is the new game mode event they've added. It's a 6-man thing. You can match make into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has random events through it. You can when you've played it a couple of times, you know what events are going to be there, but it will randomly select something from those events to play. The thing I find interesting about it, though, is there's no failure state. Like, you can just keep on playing that thing, and depending on how good you are at it, the faster you'll get through it.
Don't the rewards change, though, based on like some sort of score that's ticking off in the background? It doesn't at all.
Nope, does not change at all. So the way that the rewards work is that you have this chalice, and you put gemstones into the chalice that change the rewards that you get. So if you put in certain gemstones into the chalice, like I've been trying to grind out this really good SMG and get a decent roll on it, and by slotting certain gemstones into the chalice, I can guarantee that every single time that I run Menagerie, I will get I get an SMG, and I'll get it with range masterwork available on it, but I can't guarantee the perks. And that's the only part of it I can't guarantee.
Right.
If it takes me 30 minutes to finish the Menagerie, or if it takes me 5 minutes to finish the Menagerie, it doesn't matter. Either way, I will still get that reward. And yeah, it's super interesting. Like, you can keep on fucking up, and it'll be super frustrating. And like, you see pretty quickly, like if you're in a run where people are just constantly fucking up, people will drop off and leave. But compared to Reckoning, where there are failure states, and it's just the most frustrating thing in the world, especially when it's, a random group of people, this is so much better. And as a way to get gear and to guarantee that you get certain pieces of gear, it's so, so good. Like, it's basically like weapon crafting, essentially. You can't guarantee the perks, but you can guarantee what kind of weapon, what specific weapon you get, and the masterwork on it. And it's super interesting.
And you do sort of have a progression system in it as well, with the chalice that's sort of core to your rewards that you pick up. You can actually level up your chalice to give you a better chance of getting what you want as you progress through it. So yeah. It has essentially like talent points, and you unlock those talent points by earning Imperials. And you earn Imperials by running a Menagerie, and if you unlock certain stuff, you can get it for running other things. And if you get triumphs, so the game's achievements, they will also give you Imperials. Yeah. So you have this like nice flow of Imperials to just kind of constantly unlock stuff in it. And it's just a really, really interesting progression system. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Destiny 2, over this last week in particular, has got its hooks back into me in a big fucking way. And it's not actually just as a result of the Season of Opulence stuff. Like, I've just dived back in and realized exactly how much content there is in this game still, and stuff that I missed from the Season of the Drifter. And I am just enjoying the shit out of it again. Like, I'm actually paying more attention to what weapons I'm trying to level up, and setting myself some goals in terms of things that I want to sort of grind towards a little bit. But the thing that I'm still enjoying the most about the game is Gambit. I fucking love Gambit. It's so much fun to play. So, and it remains the one sort of, I guess, weak point in the sort of balance between Destiny and Warframe for me, in that I just wish Warframe had something like Gambit, and I would probably play a hell of a lot more of it. But that sort of combined PvE, PvP activity in Destiny is just the thing that keeps winning me over, because it is so goddamn fun. So
Gambit Prime is amazing.
Yeah.
Like being able to go into a random group of people and be wearing a set of gear that basically says, I'm going to do this thing. Yeah. And you can rely on me to do that thing. And it basically becomes a team exercise, essentially. And you go in there and you do your job and you do it well and you win games, and it's just fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And you have a place in there for the hardcore PvPers where they can go and jump in and start killing the other players on the enemy team. Or you can just be like, I don't want to do that. I want to kill NPCs and focus on that part. And everybody benefits. I love that.
It's kind of funny too. Like, I think that probably part of my renewed enthusiasm for Destiny 2 at the moment, it has got a lot to do with what I know is coming down the pike in the next few months as well. Like, when you know that cross saves and moving over from different accounts between platforms is going to be a thing. And Matt, especially like you and I, knowing that we're going to be able to play on the same platform soon, finally,
I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, it just means like all the time that you're putting in now is going to pay off. Like it's all going to be working towards something that down the track is going to be super fucking worthwhile and enjoyable. And I feel really good about playing the game right now. And it's also just really fun. Destiny 2 is really fun. It's a great game now. Like I thought it was before. I was one of the believers early on that didn't really sort of lose love for the game, even though it sort of launched in a content light state compared to what it is now. The game's got so much shit in it now. It's ridiculous. Like it's overwhelming. And the daily and weekly sort of stuff that you can do in order to progress is way more than it was before, to the point where you're never sort of lacking for things to do. There's too many options. So yeah.
Like I like playing Destiny and I like playing other games as well. And it got to the point where I was trying to keep two of my characters kind of on top of things at the same time. And I had to give up on that because like I literally cannot put enough hours into that game to get them both through all the content I want to get through. And I only have enough time to do one character. And even then, like it's so, if you set your sights on something, you can just keep on doing that stuff. So there's not really any cap anymore. Like a lot of what I've been doing is like the Black Armory stuff from DLC before, which might I add, it's super neat that content's still relevant. Yeah. You can get stuff out of it that's fucking awesome and amazing to use in Crucible, grind out a weapon that you can go and use in PvE. Like I got a bow out of Black Armory, and this is DLC that's like a pretty old now. It's like 9-12 months old or something like that. And I got this amazing bow out of it that I started using. I'm like, holy crap, this thing's awesome. And like, this is content that if it was World of Warcraft, it would be outdated. Like it would be a weapon that you'd be just over leveled basically. And you wouldn't be able to use again. You just dismantle it or destroy it basically. But yeah, I love that reuse of content. I think it's super cool.
Yeah. Agreed. I'm all about it. I got to play a bunch more Menagerie though. Like I haven't played nearly enough of that. So I've run through a couple of times.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. There was one more game that I've been playing, which I'll just very quickly touch on this week before we launch into the rest of the episode, because we've gone long on games, but that's to be expected. I have been playing a game that some of the rest of our gaming group picked up a while back, and we finally sort of all jumped in as a group one night, called Space Engineers. Have you guys ever heard of this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, no. I played it before.
No.
You played it. So, I'm still fairly sort of shallow into it. I haven't delved in too deep. It was described to me as like a bit of a Minecraft in space kind of game. And you know my thoughts on Minecraft, of course. Super fan of all those sorts of games. So I jumped in and had a bit of a play. What I found though is that it's actually probably a lot more like No Man's Sky meets Kerbal Space Program. So it's got that same kind of third person sort of running around in a 3D sort of environment, sort of gathering resources and building sort of crafting systems and gathering more sort of intense resources and mechanics and that sort of stuff, just like No Man's Sky does. And it has the exploration aspect as well, although nowhere near as aesthetically pleasing as No Man's Sky. Like your planets are a lot more barren in Space Engineers. But the thing it also has is it has the sort of physics engine and the construction technology that allows you to actually build your own sort of vessels, like whether it's ground-based vehicles or full-on starships that you can actually sort of fly off the surface of the planet and traverse the solar system with. You can, like, piece by piece actually make these things, like, with all of the working mechanics and everything. And it's super involved with the engineering and the tech side of things, and that's really cool. Like, I'm enjoying the hell out of that aspect of it. But yeah, I've been enjoying it quite a bit. We jumped in early on sort of on a pre-generated planet, and one thing I will say about the game is that the onboarding for it is really bad. Like, it's super confusing when you jump in for the first time. I did not understand what the fuck I was doing. I had to watch a few videos to sort of get my head around it. It's I've often criticized Minecraft for not necessarily having a good onboarding. I think it's gotten a lot better over time, but like, this is nothing compared to that. Like, this is super deep end. You really need to watch some YouTube content to get it. But once you start getting your head around it, it's really cool and fun. And it's one of those games that sort of the tech systems for people who are creative and have the time to dedicate to sort of building out and working out what weird and wonderful things they can do with the physics engine, I think could be super satisfying the more time you put into it. So Yeah, so that's some Space Engineers. I might report back on that again later once I've had a little bit more time to play. Did you play much, Matt? You seem familiar with it? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was playing, like, it would have been like a year ago or something like that.
This is still an early access game, I should mention, so it's still being worked on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I played it, it was kind of a fun toy, but there wasn't much to it in the terms of objectives that you could set for yourself or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so when I was playing, like, I was like, I'm going to build myself a life-size Millennium Falcon. And then I went and built that thing, and it looked awesome. But then I was like, well, what do I do now, right? I didn't really have much to do with it, so I flew it into somebody else's ship and then called it a day.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That was basically my game experience. And it was fun getting to that point, but after that, like, you kind of have to make your own stuff. But I know when I was playing, they were just first starting to introduce you can land on planets now. And it was just kind of really buggy, so we never really did a lot of that. We just basically spent all of our time building ships, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, again, it's another sort of space building, crafting, construction, exploration game, so still fun, still enjoy it. But that's an older game. Let's talk about some new stuff.
Now it's time to hear some gaming news. Time for some gaming news.
All right, so in the week following E3, surprise, there's not a huge amount of news. We've had the flood. Now we've got a little bit of a drought. So look, let's pick out a couple of little snippets. So we have our first official Fortnite cartoon. So did anyone get a chance to see this?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
It's fun. It's fun for the kids.
It's not bad, actually. It's not bad at all. I mean, I'm certainly not the world's biggest Fortnite fan, but in terms of, like, it's kind of like the stuff that Blizzard was doing with the Overwatch cinematic shorts. It's along the same kind of vein, and I mean, this is actually pretty decent. So even if you're not a fan of Fortnite, the game, I encourage you to check it out because the animation and the effort they put into it is actually kind of cool. So,
is it going to be on like Netflix or something like that, or is it just a web thing?
It was kind of embedded in like a bigger event. Like it was, I forget what it was. They were actually having some sort of Fortnite charity event with a bunch of celebrities and stuff, and they played this as part of the event. So it might have been designed just for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was just curious because, like, in my mind, I could imagine like a Fortnite cartoon becoming like a cultural touchstone for this generation. Where if like a Fortnite cartoon became huge, then people could be like kids could be talking about it when they're growing up, like people talk about SpongeBob or Simpsons, that sort of thing. But if it's just some web thing, then yeah,
I get the impression it's going to follow a very similar trajectory to what they do with like League of Legends, where they every now and then they have like the ad for playing League of Legends, or they do like a song, like the DVA stuff. And it's just like a really cool once-off thing that sort of enhances the brand a little bit, but they never dedicate any sort of commitment to going beyond that. So
sure,
yeah. I mean, much again like the Overwatch shorts. So, but yeah, like I mean, for a game studio to invest in having like a full-time animation department to handle the sort of thing on a broader scale, I just don't know if there's enough money in it for them to consider doing that.
Just farm it out to Korean animators.
True. Yeah, if there's enough demand for it, that certainly could happen. So anyway, so that's the thing. What else we got?
So Fallout 76, the Battle Royale mode, Nuclear Winter, is going to continue indefinitely, which is really weird. So they're kind of doing like a beta early access type thing, and they've basically just decided, we're just going to keep on doing it now.
Yeah.
Which it kind of the way it reads to me is either one, it was massively successful and they're basically like, yep, this is working entirely fine, we're going to just keep it going because it's got players back in the game, or two, not enough people turned up and so they have to keep doing it. And
it certainly seems like
one of those things could be accurate.
Seems like one. I've been listening to a bunch of sources during the week about this Nuclear Winter mode, and the feedback on it actually seems surprisingly positive. So people seem to be really enjoying it. And I think the gist of this is that they were planning on doing like a limited preview window, but what they've kind of decided to do is just to leave the window open as opposed to having a cap on it. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully it doesn't go the way of Apex.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. But I'm glad people are having fun in Fallout 76. It's good. That's cool.
I'm not.
I'm not glad about you. I am glad, though, that we're finally getting something in GTA Online for those who still play that game. And I jump in and dabble from time to time that I think should have been in this game way, way earlier. So Grand Theft Auto Online is finally getting some sort of content involving casinos. So you'll be able to presumably actually operate some sort of illegal gambling den or casino, or depending on how sort of upper class they decide to make it, they might have a bit of a range of different properties you can invest in, like they have with some of the other content. But yeah, I mean, all the things you can make money within that game, from like illegal weapon smuggling to running, actual sort of illegal goods smuggling rackets, to drug running, to this, that, and the other. It seems like gambling is the one thing that hasn't happened yet that probably should have belonged a long time ago. I'm surprised that this has waited so long to come in. And there has been a casino kind of building in the game prior to this as well, sort of that you pass from time to time, as I understand it. It's not a big landmark on the map, I don't think, but yeah, that's super cool. Look, GTA Online is still a very, very good game when it's not getting ruined for you by the hackers that proliferate the things. So.
I was going to make a joke about how, I'm looking forward to having my own casino, and every single time I walk out the front door getting just completely blown up by some floating dude. Like, that'll be great. Looking forward to that shit.
Oh, no. Well, if you're not looking forward to that, are you looking forward to a little game called The Last of Us 2? Anyone keen on that one?
I mean, if it ever comes out.
Yes.
Well, if rumors are to be believed, it could be coming a lot sooner than we thought. So there was a recent episode on... now, this show actually used to be affiliated with the Geek and Sundry Network, but as it's part of the Critical Role team who do the D&D live action sort of playthroughs with the team of voice actors, Matt Mercer, Travis Willingham, Laura Bailey, many, many others. Ashley Jenkins, who's one of the regular players on that team, who of course is the one of the major voice actors from The Last of Us, playing Ellie in the first game and in the second game. She, during a recent interview show they do called Between the Sheets on that network, where they basically get the main players from the Critical Role game as well as other special guests to come and just chat about their general sort of work stuff and their life stories and their creative inspirations and that kind of thing. She may have let slip that the game was coming in February. It's hard to tell if she was saying it as a bit of a joke or whether it was a definite accident, but it certainly seems like what she was about to say kind of got sort of halted very quickly because she may have realized that she was about to say something she shouldn't. But there have been a couple of other sources that have, in a way, sort of softly confirmed that could be on the money. So Jason Schreier seems to have some information. This is Kotaku's Jason Schreier, who's broken a lot of big sort of news over the last year or so involving some of the industry's biggest leaks around big titles. He's sort of indicated that the information he has points to a likely February window for the game's release, and a couple other things sort of softly corroborating that too. So if this is true, then like we were saying earlier, early 2020 is looking pretty jam-packed full of some big, big hitters. So we've got Last of Us 2, if that's true. We've got Cyberpunk 2077. We've got the first episode of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I know there's at least one other thing that I'm forgetting, which is kind of big. So, yeah.
It's kind of like that last wave of the big games for this generation, I think.
Yeah.
Sort of getting ready for gearing up for the next gen. So
makes sense, because if a lot of these things were later in the year, then a lot of the attention is going to be on new console announcements and people sort of not thinking about buying new games until their launch releases. So yeah,
later in the year you'll get those cross-gen games that are coming out on both.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, cool. I caught a bit of news this week as well, which I thought was a bit interesting, and it's to do with Pokemon Sword and Shield. So classically, Pokemon games or the mainstream Pokemon games, as they've come out, have had the ability to fill out what's called your national Pokedex once you complete the main game. So obviously with the tagline of "Gotta catch 'em all," everyone wants to have a completionist kind of Pokedex in which you log and capture, if you can, every single Pokemon that's ever been released. And there are certain ways to sort of complete a national Pokedex. Some of them involve the use of the Pokemon Bank and transferring Pokemon into later titles so that you can add them to your decks. But either way, it's one of those completionist things that a lot of people have really loved doing. Some people have been doing it since the very first Pokemon games. But news came out this week that Pokemon Sword and Shield will not have a national Pokedex. So what that means is you can only have logged in your Pokedex Pokemon that are from the Sword and Shield games. So that means whatever Pokemon they decide not to put in the game from past titles won't be available in the Pokedex. So that's upset a few of the sort of hardcore completionists out there.
Does that mean you can't bring them into the game at all, or they just won't be logged in the decks?
Yeah,
It means you can't bring them into the game at all.
Yep, at all. So, yeah, it's a pretty big blow to hardcore Pokemon fans that like completing national decks. I've never done it myself, but I think, Christian, have you done a national decks before?
Not completely, but
Yeah.
I've maintained probably like an 80% full national decks for a long time.
Yeah, so it's interesting that, and it seems kind of backwards in the at first glance, via the fact that we have so much readable available technology that would make it easy. But I think the developers have a good point in that there's now over 800 Pokemon. So for them to put all of those Pokemon in the game, it would be a massive, massive effort. But I think one of the funniest things to come from this news is that someone online, in an offhand tweet, said, "Oh, it would only take 5 minutes per Pokemon to add them into the game."
Yeah.
And as a result of that, a lot of 3D artists took that as a challenge to render Pokemon in like online modeling software in 5 minutes. So if you want to Google 5-minute Pokemon, there's some pretty hilarious results of what 5 minutes of online modeling would actually get you.
Tangela is my absolute favorite. It's so funny.
Just a squiggle with eyes. There's some good ones in there, but yeah. So probably not the best news around Pokemon Sword and Shield, but I mean, it doesn't affect me greatly as I've never been a national dex kind of guy anyway. But it is a bit sad that you won't be able to import Pokemon from other games, because obviously I would love to see some of my favorites in Sword and Shield. So I just got to cross my fingers and pray that Heracross is in Sword and Shield and I don't have to leave him out.
Are they going to change the tagline for Pokemon now to "Gotta catch a bunch"?
Gotta catch these ones.
Yeah, exactly. I actually think this totally blows. I'm really disappointed with this. I think it's fucking bad, considering this is kind of the standard, the gold standard, and that's been maintained for so long. And if the only reason that they're not maintaining it is the amount of time and effort it would take to put it in, I mean, it makes some sort of commitment to adding that functionality as time goes on. Like, you'd focus on the Galar region ones for the initial release, and then add DLC that allows you to port more and more generations worth of Pokemon in, similar to what they've done with Pokemon Go. But at least commit to doing it, because that is the whole fucking crux of Pokemon games, being able to collect everything. So
they've done that with previous 3DS games or mainline games, where they've locked the decks to the regional decks for a limited period of time, and then later on they open up the ability to import from the Pokemon Bank to get the national decks filled. But they have confirmed that they won't be doing that with this game. And Junichi Masuda, like the Pokemon creator, has said that this is also their approach moving forward. That because he confirmed that with Sword and Shield there will be over 1,000 Pokemon, and it is just too much development time and effort to make them all. And he said that they're focused on higher fidelity animations for these Pokemon. So they're kind of trying to make these Pokemon sort of animate better, rather than spreading their development time and budget too thin on doing them all. And what I find interesting too is there's a YouTube channel that I really like called New Frame Plus, and it's all about video game animation, and it's like a deep dive into different animations in games. And there's an episode that is all about tracking Pokemon mainline animations from Gen 1 up until Sun and Moon, and what changes each generation. What kind of little tweaks they add to the sprites, or the front-facing sprite, or the attack animations. And one of the points that this guy makes in the video is that with the jump to X and Y, they had to basically start from scratch and render all these Pokemon in 3D for the first time in a mainline series. And he talks about it as if that this is a new beginning, that now that they could use these 3D models and scale them up and keep using them moving forward, but clearly they can't, and that all the development effort they went into for XY Sun Moon, and then the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, the 3DS 3D ones, they are claiming, Pokemon companies claiming that they can't just import that moving forward. But people have looked at the models of Sword and Shield, and some of the Pokemon models do look like exactly the same as the ones from the 3DS. So there's some kind of speculation on are they being entirely honest by saying that they can't port that work forward, or are they trying to fandangle some excuse in there, but it's just weird that they've like they can't keep that work forward in that they had all these Pokemon in 3D already. So
maybe it's part of their justification for wanting to add a larger number of new ones in this game. Because the last couple of generations haven't been maybe as many new entries due to the fact that there are already so many. I mean, you certainly saw a bit of a half measure with the Alolan Pokemon as well, because instead of adding a huge amount of new Pokemon designs, they kind of had the Alolan entry versions of each of the existing ones, which was kind of a half step. So, yeah. What do you think, Matt?
So, yeah, all right. So, Pissed Off Game Dad's going to come out now. I think you're all entitled sons of bitches, quite honestly. Okay. They will absolutely not be able to use the models from the 3DS. Like, you're talking about a 240p screen going up to 720p on the Switch. The number of vertices and everything like that, the shapes of the Pokemon is dramatically lower on that platform. And you will have to have less actual, like, skeletal bits to actually animate those Pokemon. So you can get away with a lot more on the 3DS than you could ever get away with on the Switch, especially since that's going to be displayed on a big screen, right? So they're going to have to at least remodel. They might be able to reuse skeletons and animations, but they're also going all out and making a whole bunch of new animations that didn't exist before, right? Like, there's a thing that I was seeing online that was really funny about Machoke chasing a player, and it's terrifying because you've never seen Machoke run before, but now it is, right? Like, because these are new animations that are going into the game. These are Pokemon that are moving around in the game environment at a scale and a resolution that's just not been done before. I have no doubt there'll be some degree of reuse in there, but saying that they could just port over the models from the 3DS to the Switch, I guarantee if that was what they were doing, the thing that we'd be hearing complaints about right now is how lazy the Pokemon team is, right? So that's point number one. Point number two is, so on one hand, we have everybody complaining about the fact that Pokemon Sword and Shield is, coming out without the ability to have all these Pokemon. And on the other hand, you have all these other Nintendo fans that are also Pokemon fans complaining about the fact that Animal Crossing is taking longer to get developed. So which one do you fucking want, you entitled sons of bitches?
I haven't heard anybody complain about the Animal Crossing.
They have been complaining about Animal Crossing. It has been happening.
I don't think
in much the same way that people were complaining about Metroid.
For the record, I wasn't complaining about the National Day stuff.
Absolutely. I totally think take longer. I think take longer and give us all of them. That's honestly what I think. Because I think part of the issue with this is the legacy that you're talking about. Because the legacy of Pokemon games has been that people who have played, from right back in the GBA days with Fire Red and Leaf Green and have taken their Pokemon right through from then to now. Yeah. All of a sudden, there's a chance that some of those Pokemon that they've had for that long are not going to be able to be used anymore. And particularly when you're associating a cost with a service like Pokemon Bank, which is designed to give you that forwards compatibility with your Pokemon. If you've been paying for that with the expectation that, hey, I'm going to be able to use these things that are stored on my bank forevermore in all of the future games, which has certainly been the standard from this point, up until now, then all of a sudden to learn that something may be languishing in Pokemon Bank for an indeterminable amount of time from this point going onwards that you've put hundreds of hours into building up and developing and fighting with, I can totally understand why some people would be fucking disappointed with that. So, yeah.
I can understand people being disappointed, but lashing out at the game developers and calling game developers lazy for not doing it,
I agree. That's
that
wrong.
Is not what is going on, and that's why
I haven't heard people saying that though.
Yeah.
I've heard people being disappointed about it, but I haven't heard people lashing out at the game developers. It's just in my bubble anyway. And I don't care about this news at all. I'm fine with it.
The moment that you're going through the stuff and saying, oh, these look like they're just imported from the 3DS and put onto the Switch, like you're bringing into question, okay, well, they're just being lazy about it, right? Like, they could just import stuff from the 3DS, but they're not doing that, and they're using it to justify or whatever. Like, I totally understand people's disappointment, and I think it's perfectly fine to be disappointed about it, but there's also a lot of realities to game development here, and this was never going to be sustainable, right? Like, either what was going to happen was a new Pokemon game was going to come out, and they were going to have to cap the Pokemon that were going to appear in it, or a new Pokemon game was going to come out and you were going to get like 2 or 3 new Pokemon. And it was going to be pick one, basically. There was never going to be any way. Like, the thing that I'd heard, like, the resource and asset creation is the lesser concern than game balance, right? Because how the fuck do you balance 1,000 unique Pokemon?
You don't, because who cares about Pokemon balance?
Somebody cares.
But I think more people care.
Nobody should care enough for it to affect the game.
Yeah, I think more people care about having all of them than they care about all of them being balanced. Really.
Yeah, we're getting into, theoretically who cares more about what, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to make an argument saying more people care one way or the other. I'm mostly just saying, like, to say that this is anything, like, it's disappointing, but it should also be understandable.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, to play devil's advocate on my own disappointment for a moment, one positive that can come from this is if you want to look at the potential sort of, if they're looking into a potential esports scene expansion for Pokemon, there's already an existing one. So the Pokemon sort of video gaming sort of competitive scene is quite massive. This is a very good way for them to balance that aspect of the game.
Yeah.
Because you can limit some of the combinations and freshen up the meta every time there's a new generation game.
It's already wildly unbalanced though. Like even currently, there's banned Pokemon in it, and there's different power tiers. Where there's one power tier called overpowered, because the game isn't balanced, and I don't think anybody really would expect them to balance 1,000 Pokemon. So I don't really like that attitude.
A lot of this comes back to, like, we could have a whole discussion about should Dark Souls have an easy mode, right? And there is a reason I bring that up, because, like, what is the game designer's intent? And if their intent is to have a balanced game that can actually have a good competitive scene, then having over 1,000 Pokemon is not conducive to making that happen, right? Like, whereas, I don't know, like, just the way that I see it, I think we can at least all agree that it's entirely understandable why they wouldn't want to put 1,000 Pokemon into a game at the same time. But I will also add, I think they would be insane to not support Sword and Shield further by going and doing, like, what Pokemon Go has done and announced we're bringing in this generation of Pokemon now, right? Like, and keep people excited about playing the game and everything by announcing new content patches where they've added those things and they've taken their time to kind of balance things out. But if they're saying up front that that's just not going to happen, and what you get in Pokemon Sword and Shield is that's it, like, that basically,
which is what they've said.
Yeah, like that basically sounds to me like they're intending on sticking with the, this will be our game for a while, and then we're going to get another Pokemon game a couple of years down the track, and not much about it is going to change in that time.
We'll see. I mean, recently the news was revealed that Mario Maker 2 wasn't going to have online multiplayer with people in your friends list, and they've gone back on that, and in fact it will now after the public outrage to that. So I don't think they're immune to sort of changing tacked on a few of those things based on feedback, but I don't know. The Pokemon Company being involved throws a bit of a different spanner in there, because they kind of are a little bit more autonomous in the way that they manage their affairs. So, we'll see.
As I say, I totally understand the disappointment. I just think that, the response the developers have been getting that I've been seeing has not been friendly, and it's really not cool, and I'm kind of tired of it.
That's fair. That's entirely fair. All right, well, main topic for tonight, which we're going to have a short chat about now. I was about to say a shat, we're combining short and chat. It's not what I meant to say at all. So, we haven't actually talked about this one before, but much in the same vein as what we did a little while back when we did our combined sort of genre discussion on RPGs and roguelikes. We thought we'd have a little chat tonight, given that it is kind of the time with Cadence of Hyrule release and a couple of other things that we've had not that sort of long ago, to have a chat about rhythm games and what we think about the rhythm game genre and some of our highlights of that particular group of games and what we think works and doesn't with it. So now I think we offline had a very sort of brief back and forth where we kind of worked out that maybe Christian was the one who had a bit more experience on this kind of stuff. So would you say that's accurate, Christian? Are you a bit more of a rhythm game fan?
I do love rhythm games. I have played quite a few rhythm games.
Yeah.
So
Christian is a Class A weeb, therefore has played plenty of rhythm games.
Yeah. That's interesting you bring that up. So Luke, are you throwing to me to kind of start this off with a definition?
I wasn't, but if you're volunteering, go ahead.
No. Well, okay. I just wanted to rhythm games, it's kind of in the name of the genre, isn't it? Like, it's games where there's a gameplay element that is about maintaining a rhythm, and people should know what a rhythm is as a musical component, and that can take a whole bunch of different forms. It can be like with a plastic instrument. I think that's one of the big things people will instantly recognize, are like Rock Band or Guitar Hero, even arcade things like DDR. Like that's a huge, that's one half, I'd say, of the rhythm gaming is like peripheral rhythm games, and then the other half is just like tapping rhythm games, which is the kind of weeby side of things that Adrian was alluding to. Like one of the biggest ones is Hatsune Miku, the Vocaloid. People may know who she is without even knowing the name if they've seen that anime girl with the two big green ponytails. That, and like her whole thing is that she's a protagonist in a rhythm game series, Project Diva. And there's also like the Persona dancing games and a whole bunch of mobile games, that sort of stuff. So I kind of see there being like two big halves to rhythm gaming. That's peripheral gaming and the sort of more tapping based weeb rhythm games. And I love them both. I love them both, but I don't know. Do you guys think, is there something more specific or any more you can drill down into what a rhythm game is?
I think for me, a rhythm game is any kind of game where your input matches to like a beat, and specifically penalizes you if you're not on the beat. So obviously, having just played Cadence of Hyrule, that one springs immediately to mind. But there's plenty of other games that have that kind of mechanic built in. I think one of the oldest ones that comes to mind is Parappa the Rapper. Do you remember the PS1 game, Parappa the Rapper?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was like a classic, rhythm game. But I think for me, it starts in the arcade, because I remember being sort of 15, 16 and heading up to the arcade at the local food court and playing DDR, and there was a drumming game. I can't remember the name of it, but a mate of mine and I used to drop about $10, $20 every time we went there.
Taiko Drum Beat, maybe?
No, I can't remember. That name doesn't sound familiar. But either way, it was. I remember those being quite fun. It's the kind of thing where if you put in enough time into it, you can get quite good at it. I couldn't do it now because I'm fat and old, because I don't have the energy to play those kinds of rhythm games. So maybe the Weeb version of rhythm games is more appealing. But yeah, I think I mean, outside of Cadence, the sort of more Japanese rhythm games where it's more like about button input, and then your peripheral games, I can't think of too many more outside of that. Maybe the SingStar style ones, if you could count those as rhythm games. But they're, I guess,
more like a pitch game.
Yeah, more like a karaoke game, I guess, more than anything. But yeah, I can't. Can you guys think of any others?
I mean, I can think of a bunch, but one of the questions I was going to ask in terms of the genre definition and sort of starting to get into a bit more of the mechanical discussion that you kicked off there is that I think there's a lot of games that are really well known for the influence that their music has on the game as a whole. And sometimes I think that you definitely play the game with a certain sort of pace and momentum that matches the music without it being directly correlating to an actual sort of like beat pace. And I would...
Do you have an example?
Well, maybe we could even use Doom as an example. So Doom's a momentum shooter. So is that a rhythm game? Because you definitely do better when you get into a rhythm with that game. No?
No, it's not. I get what you mean, Luke, where like you're getting into a rhythm playing that game. There's a flow, and you can be like jamming with the music as you're playing.
Let me give you a better example then, because this is probably a more timely recent example. Because obviously I know that Doom is not a rhythm game. That was a bit facetious, but let me throw out Tetris Effect. What do you think about that one and where that fits into the model?
No, I don't think it is, because that it's almost flipped on its head with Tetris Effect, where instead of you, the player, succeeding by matching to the rhythm of the game, Tetris Effect matches to your rhythm. Okay. And the music that's generated by the game is emergent from the rhythm of you playing it. But that's not the objective of the game. That's not what you're sort of scored on. There's no rhythm element to your success in the game. So that's an interesting example, but I don't think it's a rhythm game. It's just a game that has a really cool rhythm to it.
Yeah, that matches the gameplay in some way, but because it's not sort of correlated to the input, it's more the output. You don't think it matches the genre.
Yeah. Because I think there are music. There can be like musical games or like music based games that aren't rhythm games. I think, like Adrian was saying, it really like for the functioning genre, it has to be you need to match the beat of the music in order to do good at the game, and that's, I think, the kind of the functional definition of the genre.
Yeah. Okay. I would agree with that. I think that makes a lot more sense.
There can always be some fringe cases. There may be something lurking around the corner that trips me up, but I think I could pretty confidently call any game I see a rhythm game or not.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm wondering if we can think of any examples where it's not necessarily the beat, but other aspects of the music that you're trying to match to in order to sort of get a benefit. But yeah, I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head.
SingStar is the closest to that because it is more pitch based than
True.
like you have to match kind of multiple elements of the music in that. But yeah, that is very karaoke based.
Okay, so maybe if we're not sort of narrowing it down to specifically a beat, you are at least interacting with the music in order to get a desired effect which impacts gameplay. That's kind of where we're at.
Sounds fair.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Nice. Well, what sort of good things do we like about rhythm games, and maybe if there's anything that we don't like about rhythm games, any particular pros and cons with some of the ways that mechanics are demonstrated in different games? Are there any that you particularly love or hate because of specific reasons? What do you think?
Well, I've got a couple, but does anyone else want to go first?
Yeah, I might jump in. I think for me, it comes down for me to a bit of personal taste because I've played like a range of rhythm games, and I think there's certain rhythm games like your arcade style ones where it's like DDR or a drum game where the goal is just to kind of complete the song and get a score that matches the song and your inputs. And then there's other rhythm games which kind of have a greater sort of where the rhythm part of the game is like the controller or the mechanic for it. As an example, like something like Cadence of Hyrule or Crypt and Necrodancer. So in those rhythm games, the rhythm is sort of like the lens by which you control the character, but it's not like the music itself is not the entire point of the game, unlike more of those arcade ones. And I think Beat Saber maybe falls into that kind of more arcade-ish peripheral style rhythm game where it's more about sort of enjoying the music and getting a score to the music. And not having played a lot of the Japanese style ones, maybe you can confirm, Christian, if that's similar or whether there is a greater kind of game behind the rhythm, or are they mostly just like input based to the music?
Just input based. How many excellence are you getting? You get a score at the end, A to F or to S rank sort of thing, based on how many notes you hit. It's very just scored on your performance, like matching the music.
Yeah. So I guess for me, I prefer. I mean, I've played both, but I like the sort of maybe newer. It's maybe not the right word, but I like those kind of rhythm games that have like have further gameplay and a bit more depth to it, apart from just the rhythm itself. It's probably why I've never played one of the Japanese-style rhythm games, but have played both Necrodancer and Cadence. I'd like to see a few more of those. That's kind of what I enjoy, but that's just my perspective.
There's another one you might want to check out. Have you heard of Thumper? Anyone heard of Thumper?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So Thumper's like a racing game, but it has a like it's like single player racing, so not really racing. But it's a car game which is rhythm based, and you need to match to beats to avoid obstacles and that sort of thing. So it has that extra layer of gameplay that you might enjoy, Adrian, where it's not just about doing good at the song; it's about progressing through levels, and it has this kind of metal aesthetic that's pretty cool.
Adrian, you'd love it because you basically play as a cybernetic beetle. So
yeah, you're a beetle.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I've seen that actually. I think I have seen that. Yeah.
You can get it in VR too. I
played it in PSVR. You might have seen me play it.
I may have. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, soundtrack's super good on that one. I'm a big fan of that game. That's cool.
So for me, like pros, there's two big ones that come to mind, and the first one is enjoying the music. Like for a rhythm game, if I don't like the music, then I'm not going to really enjoy the game very much. Yeah. So that's a huge one. And the second one is the accuracy and the complexity of the input. So a lot of the Japanese ones in particular, where you're just kind of tapping on a screen, a lot of them are on my Vita or the 3DS, where you've got like an actual screen that you're tapping. And there's a real art to the how many things are happening on the screen at once, and how many different types of inputs do you have to do. A lot of them are like just simply as the triangle flies across the screen and overlaps with the stationary triangle, you have to sort of match the button. But then there's other ones where it's like click and drag or swipe or do different actions. And there are some games that are overly complex, or they introduce inputs that are inaccurate, like some touch-based ones can be frustrating if they don't read your inputs correctly. So for me, that like the latency and the accuracy of the inputs has to be like spot on, and I have to really enjoy the music. And those are the two things that I really like, because for me, I do just really enjoy getting into the flow of matching to the music and like getting into that zone of just having my fingers going all over the place, matching to the music. And I don't need that extra level of gameplay that Adrian was saying. I love just the songs themselves.
Matching the accuracy of the inputs is a pretty important one. I think that's actually one of the biggest problems with some of the singing games, like particularly games like Guitar Hero that actually have a singing element. And I don't know if this is just a product of the fact that everybody actually outwardly sounds different to what they think they sound like. A fact that you become brutally aware of when you podcast every week and have to edit your own voice afterwards. But like playing some of those games, you think that you're matching the pitch of like what you're having to do to get the success state in the song. But you often feel like you're singing to match what the song is requesting rather than singing to what you think it should sound like. And that's really unnerving at times. So it kind of impacts the enjoyment of the game a little bit, I feel, in those particular cases. I actually think with rhythm games, like a lot of the things that are massive positives can be flipped on their head and be massive negatives depending on how you look at them. So like one other thing which I think is a real hallmark of rhythm games and can be a huge positive or negative depending on how you approach it, is the fact that a lot of rhythm games are very skill-based when it comes to being successful at them. Like there's not many rhythm games that you can brute force your way through with just consistent gameplay and, repeated attempts without actually getting better at the skill that it's trying to drive. So, I mean, Beat Saber, for instance, you could do like a track 10 times and you can't really approach it any differently. You kind of just have to get better at the one thing, and it's very much down to your skill. You can't accidentally succeed at games like that. You can't, just have a lucky run. Like it's still skill that's kind of driving your success, the way through. So,
They do tend to be quite flexible with like difficulty options and that I've seen. Like I can't think of a rhythm game that doesn't have like difficulty options.
True.
Really.
Yeah.
So they at least have that, like, right from Guitar Hero going from like easy to like, excellent or whatever the difficulties are. There's usually a pretty good progression of difficulties. Like a lot of the time there'll be high difficulties that are locked behind like doing all the songs through once, and then you unlock the next difficulty, and there can be a real fun progression going from normal to hard to very hard to insane or whatever.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. Like I really like that aspect of rhythm games, but I can appreciate that could be a turn off for certain people. So people who like to progress based on sort of time put in rather than sort of skill developed kind of thing. But and I think the other sort of pro flip to con, depending, is what you were mentioning a second ago as well about was it Adrian, about the type of music. So if you're playing a game where the game is actually really good and the mechanics are really solid, but it's a type of music that you don't enjoy, then you could find that you don't enjoy the game despite the fact that it's actually really good simply because of the music choice, the music genre.
Oh, for sure. Like the Hatsune Miku Project Diva games, like that's all. It's a Vocaloid, so it's a robot anime girl voice. It's not even a real person that's singing, and so like that's a fraction of the world who can even tolerate that kind of music, and even fewer that actually appeals to. So definitely cuts a lot of people.
Flip it
out.
on its head, and if it's a type of music that you do enjoy, then you really really like the game because it's just putting you in the thing that you love. So.
Like Guitar Hero Metallica.
Exactly like that. Yep, 100%.
So I'm going to make a joke, and it's entirely relevant, okay? But hold on with me here, okay? Souls games are the Guitar Hero of the action game genre, okay? Like, there's a rhythm to those games. They aren't rhythm games. I'm going to say that right now. Like, they aren't rhythm games because there's no music that you're playing to. But you're reacting to stuff that's actually happening on screen, right? Like, you're getting a prompt, you're responding to it. And I think that for me, so like I am terrible with rhythm games. There's a very, very small number of rhythm games that I can really find myself enjoying. But for me, there's like this level of accessibility that rhythm games kind of lack in the same way that Souls-likes actually kind of lack that level of accessibility, because you need to have a certain amount of reaction time going into them to be able to play them particularly well. And, lower skill levels and lower difficulty levels in those games do help, especially with the rhythm games. But sometimes even then, like, when the first rhythm games that I ever played were Guitar Hero, and I actually had the plastic guitar and everything like that, and I was shit. Like, I just did not play those games well at all, and it was kind of an awful experience for me because of it, and it kind of turned me off ever trying rhythm games again.
I could get that, yeah.
And it wasn't until actually just this year, last year, sorry. Oh god, it's been so long. So we were at PAX and I saw Soundfall while we were there, which is a rhythm action game, right? And I was chatting with the devs, and the devs gave me access to it, and I played the prototype version that they had as part of their Fig Kickstarter thing, and I loved it. Like, it took me a while to get kind of used to the mechanics, but the level of rhythm that it kind of expects you to have, there's some freedom there that a game like Guitar Hero, like you're talking about like half a second to get that button press in to be able to match the rhythm the game's kind of expecting you to match. Whereas Soundfall felt like it had a bit more freedom in there, and a lot more kind of mechanics and ways that you kind of interact with it. But games like Thumper and so the Zelda one that just came out, those seriously interest me, but I'm almost scared to play them because there's obviously a level of investment to actually get into those games, and I kind of expect to bounce off because of I just don't have the reaction time that those games seem to expect me to have. Whereas, I don't know if it's a reaction time or something else, but like whenever I'm under pressure, I just start fucking up, basically.
Yeah, they do put the pressure on, that's for sure. Yeah.
I guess the good news with Cadence is that there's one beat for the whole game. Like nothing that even when the music changes, the beats that you move the characters around to and attack to is always just a constant like boom, 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 boom. That rhythm never changes throughout the entire game. So you can even just hop back and forth on the spot until you work out what you want to do.
Yeah.
Or there's actually no penalty really to just standing still and not doing anything. That's the one thing about the Cadence of Hyrule, which is a little less punishing than Crypt and Necrodancer, is that like you can just kind of chill out and take your time a bit more and not have to worry. So if that's a barrier to entry, you may find that's not as hard as it seems. At least if that's
like
any motivation.
Crypt and Necrodancer is actually one that I've always wanted to play because it seems accessible enough. But like another Guitar Hero, just I can't do it.
That's just an interesting point though with Cadence of Hyrule. Like in that game, you are literally matching the beat of the music, not actually matching the rhythm of the music. Like it's still definitely a rhythm game, but like musically, it is the beat. Whereas in Guitar Hero or Project Diva, you are having to match the rhythm of the music, which changes through verse and chorus and everything. So it is different. Yeah.
Well, anyone else got any sort of personal favorites? And while we're talking favorites, like let's consider at this point too, if you were going to recommend some rhythm games to someone who is new to the genre to sort of demonstrate like the best of what's on offer, what kind of things would you recommend to them? So
if you could go back in time, Guitar Hero 2 is mwah, mwah. That's like the pinnacle for me of rhythm games. I love Guitar Hero 2 specifically. There's something about it, and like
Freebird.
The reverb, and the fact that the guitar was cabled meant that it was like instant. Like there was no input lag at all. Like I've tried playing like guitar style games after they've gone wireless, and it's just never been really worked out the same. The song selection was good. I have memories of like Christian and I taking turns, like just jamming out in the living room. Yeah, Guitar Hero 2, I think.
Trying to beat the Devil Went Down to Georgia on Expert.
Yeah. Or like jamming out to Freebird. Yeah, I just remember loving.
You guys ever get into Rocksmith with the real guitar? Like the one that's actually designed to help you learn to play an actual guitar? So
no, that's interesting.
I remember when they relaunched Guitar Hero a couple of years back, and they changed it so that it was like that Guitar Hero Live, where you couldn't actually pick the song you wanted, and the guitar only had black and white buttons, and there were rows of them. That was just shit. Like, it was so disappointing. It was so disappointing because I was ready because there'd been many years since the plastic instrument craze had died down, and I was ready for it to have another renaissance, but they just failed. So yeah. But as far as like my favorites go and what I'd recommend, one of my favorites is actually the first rhythm game I ever played, which is Bust a Move for the PlayStation 1. Don't know if anybody ever played that.
So the one with the little lizards, or
I don't know if there's little lizards. There's like a cast of different characters.
Okay.
Like there's all sorts of different characters, kind of like a cyberpunky sort of weird thing. There's a guy with a gas mask. There's a alien girl. There's a capoeira guy. And there's all sorts of different people. But that's the first game that I can remember that was a rhythm game with like inputs coming down the screen that you had to match, and the music's really cool. And I still listen to the music sometimes. Some of the songs. So Bust a Move. That's the game that started me off on rhythm games, and I love. But wouldn't recommend it now. Now, if I were to recommend, it would depend on whether you are a weeb or not. If you are somebody who does like sort of anime style music, the easiest entry points are on mobile. So I'd recommend there's a game called Voez, Voez, and there's another game called Bang Dream. It's a very strange name.
That sounds like a Japanese mobile game for sure.
Yeah, Bang Dream, and that's about like a group of girls who all like live together and they're a band, and you can also like buy cupcakes for them and that sort of thing. But
that's how it starts, man.
But
that's how those videos all start.
But the rhythm game aspect is very fun too. But if you're not a weeb and you find yourself repulsed by that sort of thing,
bit of self-loathing.
No, please tell me more about your Bang Dream.
Then I don't think there's really much for you these days outside of like peripheral ones like Beat Saber or I can't think of much else if you're not into like anime style stuff. So.
I would consider Beat Saber to be one of the pinnacles at the moment. The biggest barrier to entry is just the fact that it's VR. But if it wasn't for that, like for beginners to get into rhythm games, it's actually super approachable because it's, the tutorial's really easy to onboard people. You can play that game at settings where, things slow down and it's not super tough. You don't have to, play the ultra hard difficulties. It's, that's a really easy entry point if you can get past the VR sort of element. Yeah.
So I don't have personal favorite rhythm games other than Soundfall. Like I really enjoyed Soundfall and I'm looking forward to it coming out, but I can't really recommend that because it's not out yet. But I'm going to rattle off some games that I know friends would be really upset with me if I didn't mention them. So one of my friends, Dale, who suggested a game for us a while back, really loves Space Channel 5, and that's an older rhythm game. He adores that. Rhythm Heaven is super popular with one of my other friends. Like they adore the Rhythm Heaven games. And if you've ever heard of Osu, it was actually developed here in Perth. And that's also a really interesting rhythm game as well.
OSU?
OSU.
Yep.
OSU exclamation mark.
Okay. Is that a PC one or?
I'm pretty sure it's mobile now. They actually had developed arcade machines. And the way that game works is it'll show a whole bunch of dots on the screen and you have to kind of drag your finger across them and hit the dots in time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. There's one that I played a little while back, which I'll just mention too. It's not by any means one of my favorite rhythm games of all time, but I enjoyed the hell out of it at the time. And I think it's probably, a good one to check out if you want something cheap and sort of simple. There's a game I played called Dub Wars, which, if you're not into sort of dubstep and electronic music, this will turn you off. But if you don't mind that kind of stuff, it's actually really fun. It's a bullet hell game where you actually play a spaceship inside a really sort of techie, sort of psychedelic environment. And the way this one works mechanically is really interesting in that you shoot from your little ship. And you shoot in different sort of patterns and directions depending on what power-ups you pick up. But it's also your guns are entirely timed to the beat of the songs. So you actually have to move around the screen. You never have to pull the trigger yourself. You always shoot in time with the music. So the whole skill is actually about positioning yourself so that when the music picks up and it goes crazy, you're in spots where you can do the most damage to all of the enemies that are sort of flooding on screen. And during the quiet parts of the song where you're really not shooting at all and the screen's starting to fill up with enemies, you kind of back off a bit and play it safe and try and survive. So the quiet times are actually the more intensive ones because you're really trying to move around and dodge stuff. Whereas when the song picks up and gets to its peak, that's when you're just unloading death at everything. So you kind of, you just get to go ham. So, but it's a super fun game. I really enjoyed the music and the gameplay was great. So Dub Wars, if you want to check that one out, it's a lot of fun. Good. Any other recommendations before we sort of put a pin in this one?
I just remember Super Hexagon. Mm-hmm. That was a good game.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
very simple, kind of just like a back and forth, left and right thing, but it's fun.
That was massively popular among the indie scene for a while, and I remember trying it and hating it so fast.
Nice. All right, well, that is rhythm games. Good job, gang. So, all right, well, we're back in the saddle with all four of us on board. We got some fun episodes ahead for the rest of the month. But any big games you guys are checking out over the coming weeks? Is there anything that's caught your attention that you're looking forward to for June? What's on the plates for you all?
I want to play Trover Saves the Universe.
Oh, cool!
That looks really funny.
Yeah,
but I have no VR, and I'm sort of skeptical about how good it'll be without the VR. Whether like the Justin Roiland nature of it will be enough to carry the game without the added gimmick of the VR, but I don't know. We'll see. I
have heard that the jokes do get a bit repetitive, but that VR is not essential for that game.
Like,
quite
honestly,
I've seen that even if you play it in like on PC without the VR, you do zip around from like you don't move around normally. You do that teleport thing like you do in VR. And so that makes me feel like the game is intended to be played in VR.
Yes.
But it's kind of the other way around, where it's like instead of a mainstream game that you can play VR, this is a VR game that you can play like mainstream. So that's kind of barring my entry a little bit. I'm kind of a bit skeptical about it before I spend money on it.
Cool.
Yeah. I only just realized last week, after we recorded the last episode, that the next Stellaris DLC actually came out fairly quietly.
I was shocked when you didn't mention that.
Yeah. And so I need to put some time in with that. But I'm going to finish Doom first.
Yeah. Nice.
I'm going to play Ori and the Blind Forest.
Hey.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's on Xbox Game Pass for PC, so I'm going to try and get some value out of that.
Get some money worth.
That's a great Game Pass game for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the next week, I think it's on the 24th. I'd have to check for sure, but that's coming up real soon. Sega's Judgment is out. So this is the game by the Yakuza creators that's set in the same sort of setting, the Kamurocho city, just without the main characters of the Yakuza series. So you're playing a detective in this one, and there's still all the brawling and that kind of stuff, but there seems to be a lot more sort of in-depth gameplay around sort of investigation and different dialogue choices and stuff. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, but there's actually some quiet sleeper games coming out in June. I think there's a few others I'm forgetting about, which I'll no doubt mention again next week. But this is definitely not a bare month, all things considered, even with the E3 stuff said and done with. So some things to look forward to. But that is a tale for another day. We will talk about that later. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us about anything we've chatted about tonight or anything you're enjoying playing, make sure you hit us up at all the usual places. So mail at Party Loaded. You can hit us on Twitter at Party Loaded Show. On Facebook, we're just Party Loaded. Or you can find everything at the hub at channelendgame.com. And make sure while you're looking around, you check out our YouTube content at youtube.com/channelendgame and on Twitch too. So twitch.tv/Party Loaded. You can find us streaming semi-regularly, or me streaming Minecraft all the time at the moment, it seems. So I've been doing that a lot.
And if you want to send in hate mail about my comments regarding the Pokemon games, you can send them to @Luke_Retallic on Twitter.
Nice. I'll pass them on to the relevant place. All right, so let's end the show now. And Matt, let's have a little chat about your Doom comments earlier. So anyway, if that's it for tonight, thanks everybody.
Good night.
Yeah. We'll catch you next week. Good night. The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.